And we are live, and welcome to the Chosen Life podcast. I am your host, The Chosen Lawyer. And today we have on our show, I had this episode circled on my calendar. I'm so jazzed for it because I'm a huge baseball buff. I love baseball my whole life. And we got MLB personality, and I term him MLB guru, Xavier Scruggs. Xavier, welcome to the Chosen Life podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. Definitely happy to share the platform with you and excited to talk about all things baseball, life, whatever we dive into. I'm excited for it. Let's do it.
Today is the real baseball talk. Like if you're a hardcore MLB baseball fan and you love baseball and you want to talk about real baseball topics, this is what we're digging into today. And so a little background for the viewers listening at home. So we have a history, Xavier and I, going back. So we each have our former lives of where we were, and we're going to talk about how life has progressed. But we first met December of 2011. So we are now closing in on 11 years. You were still a raw rookie in the Cardinal system. I was a raw MLB blogger in my former life and interviewing back then and talking baseball and both of us hopes and dreams where life was going to go. And I went back and read the interview several times, and I'm going to post a link in the bio for this episode so people can go back and read it about where you saw your strengths, what do you feel when you're going to get called up to the majors, what position you're going to play, all the generic questions you'll ever hear as a rookie. Did you ever get tired of doing those kind of interviews back then?
No, I didn't. I think because I feel like the more interviews you do, the more you're probably doing your job, right? The more you're probably progressing to where you need to get to. And also that those things help me always practice, speaking, being able to communicate my thoughts, being able to allow somebody to understand really my own narrative, right? A lot of times you think about athletes, a lot of times they're disappointed because they may have the wrong narrative or somebody may be speaking wrongly about them. Interviews are a great way to get your own thoughts out there so people have an idea of who you are as a person, not just who you are on the field.
Well, you certainly have been writing that narrative for some time now, and it keeps progressing and evolving. And when I interview somebody, I almost feel like they're my children. Like I feel like I have ownership in them, like I vested interest in them. And I love to see where everybody goes from the time we spoke. And I keep close tabs, And for you, you got to really, really keep tabs because it keeps changing, it keeps evolving, keeps getting added. I'm going to now lay out for the people listening, I have friends out there, let's say they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're always telling me, I'm so busy. I don't have time with stuff. And I said, I don't get it. You're single, you got no spouse, no kids, you have a 9-to-5 job, and you're off on weekends and you don't have time to work out. You don't have time to cook. You have no time for anything. So then I think to myself, okay, so I run a law firm as a real estate corporate lawyer, and I host and founded a podcast. So I feel like I'm pretty busy. I'm a single dad. I have a 16-year-old son. I have a lot on the go. And I think to myself, okay, I'm pretty busy. Then you go meet Xavier Scruggs and you're like, oh my God, this is at another level of busy. So you think there's busy, there's uber busy. Now, when we created this concept of the Chosen Life podcast, the idea is that everybody either lives the chosen life or wants to live the chosen life. You, my friend, are living, in my estimation, the chosen life, your chosen life. We go through your LinkedIn bio, okay? And you want to hear busy, folks? Let's jump into it. MLB player, Cardinals, Marlins, played in Korea, ESPN MLB analyst, podcast host, founded Extraordinary Athletes, where he assists athletes with marketing. He's a consultant with the St. Louis Cardinals, went back to UNLV recently to study business. He's a husband and father. His name is Xavier, and he has his kids, Xavier and Xander, which Jonathan and my son, Jeremiah. I understand the connections, it's a dad thing. And from there, his wife, Jessica. So he's a husband, a father, a broadcaster, a podcaster, a consultant with a Major League Baseball team, an MLB analyst. Have you invented somehow more time in the day? How do you do all of this and still keep a smile on your face? Please explain to us.
No, it's a blessing to be able to do all those things. And I think for me, it stemmed at a very young age. My parents were always very encouraging of the fact of, not just being an athlete, but giving back in every sense that you can, being able to, use the value that and the skills that God has given you. And for me, that's been in all those things that you mentioned. I feel like I wouldn't be doing my justice, my due diligence of this world, if I wasn't able to do a lot of those things. And ultimately, I think it stems on what you had mentioned before. It's like just using time wisely, right? Everybody's busy nowadays, but if you're able to understand what your real priorities are, then you're able to be busy in the right things, and you won't be considering it busy, right? You'll be considering it doing the things that you love to do. All those things that you mentioned are things I love to do. So really, it almost seems like I don't have enough time to do a lot of those things, but it's fun. It's what I enjoy to do, and I want to continue doing those things over and over, and even more if I can.
I love it. Like the idea is, a common theme I've seen with people in my life, whether they're clients, associates, colleagues, people that are very, very successful all have jobs, occupations, but they don't feel like they have a job. They have passions. They wake up, they love every single moment of everything they do. So it never feels like work. Like, for example, you're in a podcasting world as I am. People think that these podcasts just magically go up into the sky. You just slap on a microphone, just shoot some information, it just magically shows up. They don't realize you have to schedule the guests. You need to write down the topics. You have to write down ideas for topics. You need to get your lighting set up. You have to get everything set up. You have to have your crew. And then when you actually have the raw footage, then you got to summarize it. You have to have a production team. There's a lot that when you go into this beautiful ending, there's a team of people behind it. Yeah. And I know I would estimate for yourself in what you're doing. Like I look up, for example, Extraordinary Athletes. It's not just you. For you to do what you do, you always have a team with you, correct?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't be able to get half of the stuff that I'm able to get done without a team around me. And ultimately, that's what Extraordinary Athletes has helped become, is I understood that, all the things that I want to do requires a team. And now I want my team to be able to help out other people, whether it be marketing, whether it be learning how to use their platforms on social media, whether it be diving into the community, all of those things that has helped me really become the person that I've become while playing the game and outside of playing the game. That's what I love most, and being able to give back in that sense. But ultimately, like you said, it takes a team. You understand more than anybody. Even just specifically speaking about podcasting, all those things that you mentioned that have to get done, those are investments that you also make, not just yourself, but your team makes. If there's somebody that you want to cut video, if there's somebody that you need to cut audio, to be able to add those things to your team and to make it the way that you want it means collaboration, and those things develop over time. Those aren't things that are easy. Those are all things that take time. So it's a time and investment in yourself, in money, time, like I mentioned. All those things are ultimately who you have around you.
I tell a lot of people when I mentor young people, for example, young professionals, I went to business school, law school, and I have people that reach me out from the university I went to from various degrees, and they say to me, what's the secret to success? How do I go about it? And one of the first things I tell people, it's very, very simple. If you expect to do your job and just do your job 24/7, you're going to burn out really quick. You need to have outside interest. You need to have something that flows your passion. Hopefully it's related to your industry. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I feel like having creative outlets and being able to express yourself, it brings you more energy and more excitement into the other realms of your work productivity. Like for myself, when I am applying baseball blogging to an MLB reports and what I did back in the day, like over a decade ago, to what I'm doing now in podcasting. It's very similar principles, except for of writing it, I'm speaking it. But I feel like having that creativity, sharing ideas with people, free flow with people that I respect, that I look up to, that I would want to speak with, I feel like that should inspire others. But on the same token, it inspires myself. Do you find the same thing in your realm, that part of why you do so many things of what you do is because you have this creative need that has to burst out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to second what you're talking about is, like, if I think about podcasting, and this is probably the same for you, like when I first started podcasting specifically, I was thinking about how do I get into the media side of baseball? And my wife had mentioned, hey, maybe you should start a podcast and maybe you should sit down and interview other people on the podcast. One of my best friends said, hey, why don't you bring other people in the industry onto your podcast to talk with them? And I started to realize that ultimately the podcast was giving me all the information that I was ultimately looking for. Like when you talk about the path to success, like being able to sit down and talk to so many people about their own path, about their own experiences, ultimately you learn so much because of that. And I felt myself almost selfishly wanting to do more because I was getting all of this information. Yes, a lot of it is for people who I want to become a part of the community and learn from it as well. But I was soaking all this information in, and I think that allowed a lot of my creativity to ultimately flow. And ultimately, it's not just like podcasting, right? It could be anything. When I talk about baseball media and being able to be an analyst for MLB, like it allows me to soak in information that I didn't even know was there. As an analyst, I have to figure out kind of the ins and outs of a certain player, a certain team, a history of an organization. Those things allow me to be creative in the way that I find that information. So all of those things that allow me to be the person that I am today, it stems from wanting to learn more and wanting to be creative in that sense and wanting to really make something of my own in all of those avenues.
I love it. I love it. And, when I look at you, I listen to you, I can tell you that I follow your podcast. I follow your different postings, and it's amazing. Anybody that goes and researches you and watches your materials, you're very inspiring. You have this voice that it's very reassuring. You could be a narrator, on movies, on documentaries. You just have that trusting, gentle but strong voice, and it's knowledgeable, it's experienced. And people listening and watching you, as far as how you conduct yourself and then learning your story, you see your professional background, and then you're like me, you share your personal side, and people connect. I really feel when you're open yourself personally, if you're okay with that, if people feel the connection to you. Like I feel like I've been in your house. I know the greenhouse when it got built, and watching Jessica and watching your kids. And you have such a beautiful marriage. It's such a give and take. You can see the love you both have for each other, and you've really put it out to the world. Why you went to Korea, how you convinced her to go to Korea, and every part of it. It's cheesy, but it's fun. But it builds that connection. Have you noticed that people tell you all the time that, hey, I feel like I know you, I'm connected to you, even though they never met you?
Definitely. And I think that's what I want. That's what I ultimately want, is people to feel connected to me, feel like they relate to me. The last thing I would want is for me to build a community and people don't feel like they know who I am or don't feel a sense of relatability. And I love that. And I think ultimately, like you mentioned, not everybody is comfortable with that. But I think for me personally, being allowed to use these social platforms, being allowed to, really develop a community of people that get to see kind of what I go through on a day-to-day basis, that allows me to feel authentic, right? That allows me to be able to be relatable to other people and to be able to say, hey, we're all going through something, right? One thing I don't like is when we use social media as a tool to show that our life is perfect, because everybody understands that life is not perfect. And I think the one way that you relate to people is by showing those struggles. The one way you relate to people is by showing that you go through obstacles and trials and tribulations, because those things ultimately do what you said. They motivate other people. They encourage other people. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're here on this earth, is to be able to not just have for ourselves, but to give something back to somebody else and help encourage them.
Absolutely. It's a lot. You're right. I feel that a lot of people put out that Instagram life to say, I'm so great, things are so good. And they're almost like trying to make it that they're better than other people. And I really feel, I agree with you, that when you can actually inspire people, you can tell them, I got the secret sauce, or I think I got the secret sauce. I want to share with you. I want to see you do the best that you can. That's the most, liberating feeling, when you can help others,
Right.
Before we jump into our baseball topics, I got one baseball question from your playing days. And I got to tell you, I watched it a few times, and gave me goosebumps. Your first MLB home run.
Yeah. Yeah.
A person comes up to bat, gets a hit, gets a record hit, broke a hits record there, and Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, well-known guy, and then you come up to bat and you get the home run, drive him in, and his name was
Ichiro Suzuki. Ichiro
you drove in
Suzuki.
Ichiro freaking Suzuki on your MLB home run, and
Man.
Miami Marlins. Walk us through that from the time you got up to the plate till the time you high-fived him. What went through your mind, please?
Man, yeah, just a special moment. It's so hard to describe because it's a moment that you've been waiting for your whole life, right? I think of times when you're in the backyard and you're trying to think about hitting a home run in the major leagues, the way that the way the bat felt when the ball connected with it. It was one of those times when you just didn't feel anything. And as soon as the ball jumped off the bat like a trampoline, I knew it was a home run. And you mentioned, an all-time MLB great in Ichiro Suzuki being on second base. So when I'm running on cloud nine, I'm thinking about coming back home and Ichiro's going to be there waiting for me and dapping him up, knowing that this is a special moment for me. And to think that there's greats around me, not just Ichiro, but Don Mattingly being my manager, coming home and dapping him up. And then Barry Bonds was my hitting coach, giving me a hug after I hit the home run. There's no better feeling in the world. And it's funny that we're talking about this because like I only hit one major league home run. So the fact that was makes it that much special to me. It was like, I hit all these home runs in the minor leagues, and then it took me a while to hit a home run in the major leagues, but it was the best feeling in the world, and I'll never trade it for anything. And knowing that I got to do it, with family that's been able to see it, family that was able to support me, like those things mean the world to me.
Unbelievable. I mean, even now, with the playing days done, moved on to the next phases of your career, you must still wake up every day and say, I played in the major leagues. I did that. Does that still go through your head every day?
Absolutely. Yes, because that's such a small percentage of people that get there. And just think about it this way, like you have one dream that you've been dreaming about since you were like 5 or 6 years old. And that dream actually comes to fruition. If you think about it, most people, they don't even know exactly what that dream is, right? But the fact that I had that dream and was able to go capture that dream for a small amount of time, like that is extremely special. It doesn't happen to a lot of people. So I take that so seriously, and that's something that I'll never forget.
Look, I never played in the major leagues, and I could tell you, I showed you, I got my baseball tat going, and my ring. When people do the doorbell, it plays da 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 charge, and so I imagine
awesome.
Dude, if I played in the major leagues, I'd have pictures of that home run everywhere, plastered across my house, over my bed, everywhere. Is your house like a baseball shrine or just in the office?
No, not yet. It's not. I have some pictures in the office. I have some jerseys, but ultimately, I want to be able to get more, and not just of me. Like a lot, I have some pictures of guys I played with. I have one in front of you, can't see it, but Jason Hayward, a real close friend of mine. There was a moment when Jose Fernandez passed away with the Marlins. I have a Marlins picture of all the guys kind of circled around the mound. Some really cool pictures that, because the relationships are like the biggest thing when you think about the game, and those are the moments that I'll never forget.
So I'll give you a little secret as far as what my logic is when I'm picking a guest. And when I picked you back 11 years ago, I looked at the stats, looked at the system, and I said, where's this guy going to slot? How's it going to fit? And I saw the stats, and I said, these stats have to translate to the majors. Pools, when he's going to move on, this is going to be the guy. I had all these dreams for you, and when you went off to Korea and you mashed in Korea, I said, okay, this is the next Eric Thames. It's good. And then when I heard you speak, I said, I get it. He played it, so he understands the dynamics behind the game, but man, can this guy speak. And I saw that the second I heard you speak in podcasting and in MLB relations, I thought to myself, This guy is either one guy going to have like a stone cold podcast style, like Broken Skull Sessions, and he's going to bring on every major league star. And this is going to be like the Jimmy Kimmel of baseball, or we're going to see him on ESPN tonight. We're going to see him on the game of the week on Sunday Night Baseball. This is where he's headed. Without putting you on the spot, 5 years from now, if you had a crystal ball, where do you see Xavier Scruggs going?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be doing all those things all at this all at the same time. But ultimately, however it is that I can be able to use all the experiences that I have and be able to give that back to, whether it be athletes. Athletes are obviously a main area in which I'm really focused right now, but I also look at the youth, being able to really give back to the youth, whether they're athletes or not. Because I feel like we have to be able to, educate them about the world and not just sports, right? You think about so many of the intangibles that young people need today. You talk about making sacrifices, what discipline looks like, motivation, encouragement, all those things that sometimes we expect people to understand what it is. I think we have to show them ultimately. And I think that's what I want to be doing. So whether that's via media, whether that's via philanthropy, whatever that looks like, that's what I want to be doing.
I could 1,000% see you coaching just because people will relate to you. You're young enough that you're close enough to them that you've been there, but you're also experienced enough that you can have that voice. You're like that perfect mesh. So I could see you being in coaching, but I can see the broadcasting. It was a natural fit for you to progress to where you did. And MLB executives listening right now, bring this man on Sunday Night Baseball, bring this man game of the week. This is your guy, guaranteed. You just have that charisma. You got that it factor. So wherever you're going to go, I know you're going to be successful. You already are, and you got all your platforms, but thank you for bringing baseball to the masses and making baseball relatable to kids and to people again.
No, I really appreciate that. And that's one of the goals is, baseball is cool, but I guess some people don't really understand how cool it is. So that's one of the things that I love to do is show how cool this game is. A lot of the ins and outs of it that maybe we don't necessarily consider all the time just from watching the game. And we have to remember, like, the way the game is being consumed is different nowadays, especially for the younger generation. Maybe it's consumed within 12 to 15 seconds. So we got to be able to do a good job of being able to show them how cool this game is and doing it within a quick amount of time. So hopefully I can do that.
When MLB.com decided to get rid of stories and to get rid of written articles and went straight to videos, I knew I made the right decision to leave blogging a long time ago. And that this was, I'll tell you from my end of it, a lot of my writers in MLB reports ended up graduating to writing and being for ESPN, joining MLB organizations as a guy on the Giants, that's a scout now, and different parts. But I remember speaking to somebody in ESPN back in 2010, 2011, and they said to me, you got the writing skills. But you have to understand everything is statistics driven now. So you got to understand every single statistic, the way it works. And that's all people want to read about. And I'm like, no, I don't. I love stats. I read stats like crazy. I've been consuming stats since I was a kid, but I do not want to write about this stuff. I want to write about the stories behind the stories, the people behind the stories. That's what I'm interested in. I like that part of it. I don't enjoy the stats. And when things were going that route, I said, I'm out, I'm done. And now, I haven't changed. I'm still about the people behind the people and the stories. And that's where, it's one thing when we have, and I understand now, having the written story and reading in the words is one thing, but seeing the reactions, hearing the voice, it's another way. So my hat's off to MLB for recognizing that on MLB.com. And that's why you and I are doing what we're doing today.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think there's an understanding too. A lot of the writers, you think about, a lot of them are doing so many interviews nowadays too. So from a writing perspective, that may not be the only way that somebody's going to consume your content, right? You may need to find another way to explain about it via actual, talking audio, whatever it may be. A lot of writers now just can't be one dimensional as well.
No. And things have changed, Sports Illustrated and where the writers went, and the dynamic is changing out there. So, we don't know in crystal ball where we're going to be, but we're certainly here now. And you and I agreed now, as we jump into our baseball topics, this is not going to be about the lockout. It's been talked about till nauseum. So we're not going there. We hope everything gets settled out and we get our season soon. And once, we finally, hopefully we get spring training and we get games in, I would love to have you back and talking, live action. But for now, Without having spring training about to start, we're going to talk about broad baseball topics, things that the hardcore fans love. They debate it till the end of time, and we're going to talk about today. So let's jump in. First one, it's a biggie, MLB expansion. So we're at 30 teams right now. It's the year 2022. My estimation, logically, it's going to go to 32 teams. It only makes sense. We're going to have 16 and 16 between the AL and NL. Some nice stats I put together here just to marinate on. So think about this. The expansion fee, when it's going to happen, it's not, in my estimation, it's not. If you can disagree with me, that's fine. This is all good debate and good fun. But I think it's going to happen. They're looking at least $2.2 billion per team when they bring them in. In retrospect, back in 93, Colorado and Miami paid $95 million each. Arizona and Tampa Bay paid $130 million each in 1998. So don't give me inflation. This is bonkers beyond inflation. So if we go with the $2.2 billion numbers, each of the 30 teams are going to be getting before taxes $70 million. Think about that. So number one, my friend, Xavier, MLB expansion. Do you agree? Do you think it's going to happen? And when do you see it happening, first of all?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think you look at the game and how much it's growing, and the ability to continue to make money within the game, the ability to continue to market the game. There's a lot of cities that really teams would do quite well in if you look at their fan bases. So I'm hoping that is the case, and I think that is the case. I'm hoping it's sometime by 2025 because I think the sooner the better. I think there's definitely teams that or at least cities that really deserve a team as soon as possible. And I hope that that's the case.
You and I are on the same page, my friend. I figured as much because also, I'm not a fan, if possible. I don't like relocation. If we can avoid it, in those cities, and I've been to those cities, those fans are diehards. They love they love their team, they love their players, they don't want to lose their players. It's not their fault that the economics get in the way. And, you're always talking about the same thing, stadiums, tax money, who's going to pay for it. And the game gets lost in the whole economic shuffle. So let's take relocation off the window. So let's pretend there'll be no relocation. If right now we can talk about which cities, we think are the ones that are going to be eligible. But if right now you're going to say these two cities are the ones that are going to be awarded MLB franchises, who are you going with and why?
Yeah, one of them is going to be Nashville. I look at Nashville and that being one of the cities that continues to be booming. It's already a city that they've tried to put together. I think I want to say like a committee to acquire a team or try to at least get the money towards being able to have a team. So I look at that being a great area for a team. Another area I look at being Montreal. This was another team, another area in which they had a team. We know the Expos.
Yes.
And I think this fan base definitely deserves a team. We know how well baseball does in Canada in general. So I think that would be another great spot. Also, Vegas. I think that is a team that you look at the sports world there and how well the I want to say the Golden Knights have done with the hockey team there. The Raiders have done now with the football team there. I would love to see a baseball team there as well.
Well, I'm doing my math, buddy, and you are at 3. So you're the committee. We got your top 3 now. Which 2 are getting it?
Vegas and Nashville. Vegas and Nashville are the teams I would like to see, or the cities I would like to see.
Love it. Okay. So we are in agreement on Vegas. And I'm not going to say whether I love Vegas, don't love Vegas. I do love the city, obviously, as far as just everything about it. And I'm not a party lifestyle type guy to go into the nightclubs, but, I love, you even just, you start walking through the tunnels and you see how many memorabilia shops and how many, of course, when I'm there, who's there? P. Rose signing autographs. Of course, like it never fails. The guy's probably there every Wednesday. So there's P. Rose signing off his autograph. I'm like, hey, Pete, how you doing? But you could talk about tourists and you could talk about residents and can they sustain 81 games? No, nobody has any doubts that this is reality. In reality, gambling and money and sports, they're showing it's there. Baseball is no different. Baseball is jumping all over that. So I agree with 1,000%. So Vegas is going to happen. Yeah. We said on many, many levels, and it just makes so much sense. And that's just the reality. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when they're going to get their team. Now, I hear you in Montreal, and keep in mind, I'm Canadian here, so I'm in Canada here. We're celebrating Family Day. You're celebrating President's Day. So I have walked by the Big O, and it is called the Big O for a reason. It was an utter disaster. I've seen it from the outside. It looks so cruddy and bad. Me as a baseball fan, I never watched the baseball game from Olympic Stadium. It wasn't real baseball for me, and I just could not bear myself to go in there for the amount of times I've gone to Montreal. And I love the city with a passion, and I can see it, but it's not going to happen. And I'm saying this as a Canadian. Why I don't think it's going to happen? Number one, the dollar doesn't make any sense. Number two, travel and restrictions, players not wanting to live in Canada and taxes and everything else. It's because of the economic side of it and the frustrations of how things went. I think it's just so much easier to just put it in an American city and say, Montreal, you were on the short list, but you're one day soon. I would love to see it. I would say for the love of the game, if they take everything aside, they find a strong owner, build them the right stadium, I would love to see it. But I don't think in our lifetimes we're going to see another team in Canada. The way we lost the Grizzlies in basketball, again, circumstances, but I don't feel it, even though I want it. I see two other things. And I went back. It's funny. I wrote an article about this back a decade ago, and I don't think my opinions change on it. Mexico City would be freaking cool. I would love to see a team out there because, let's make this all North America. We brought it to Canada. Let's bring it to Mexico City. How many players would love to hang out in Mexico City and reside there, right?
That would be amazing. I got the chance to play in Mexico, so
getting in winter ball.
Yeah, so getting a chance to visit that city is amazing. I think that would be an amazing place to play. It would be an amazing fan base. They love baseball over there. And another thing, the travel wouldn't be too much of a problem. I don't think it would be, any worse than a team in Canada. So I think that would be an amazing spot.
So if I'm going with my two, and that's my kind of like homerish kind of like dream state, it'd be Mexico City. I would love to see Brooklyn get back a team, but it ain't gonna happen obviously with the Yankees and Mets with territorial rights. But how cool it'd be if you brought back baseball to Brooklyn. I think New York could easily sustain three teams. I can tell you, I've been to Mets games, I've been to Yankees games. I've been to one Yankee game my whole life. It was a Red Sox game. This was back in 2019. Wow. And I've been to many stadiums. I've been to many games. It's nothing like the experience. The second you're lining up outside that stadium, the time that you go into the stadium, they eat, breathe, sleep baseball. New York could sustain 5 baseball teams theoretically. So I would love to see Brooklyn, but again, with territorial and everything, it's not going to happen. Other cities, Portland, I think would be a safe bet, perhaps.
Yes, definitely. I would like to see Portland too.
I think that they have a very loyal fan base. I think that they're real knowledgeable sports fans, and I think baseball would be really benefiting from being out there. San Antonio, another Texas team, could see that potentially happening again because of the fan base and the dollars. I mean, the money's in Texas; it's flowing like oil, right?
Right.
Until they go electric.
Yeah, that's good. And San Antonio is a really nice spot. I could see, and like you said, it's almost Texas like one of those New York style areas where you can have 3 teams there and still get the fan bases. People love sports there, love, eat, sleep, breathe baseball. I think that's an excellent spot. I know that's been kind of tossed around as well, San Antonio.
And last two I had was Memphis and New Orleans.
Yeah, 2 places I got to play in my minor league careers. Definitely,
we were close because you were in Nashville. You had Nashville, I had Memphis.
Yeah, no, definitely Memphis would be a great place. New Orleans would be interesting for me because I'm not sure if with them having the basketball team and the football team there. I know they do a good job with those, but baseball, even the minor league side, I didn't see much interest there, even though it is kind of a bigger city with a lot of people coming to visit. I just don't know if I feel the baseball crowd is there.
I remember back when the Giants didn't get their new stadium yet, and baseball was so hot in Toronto because we just opened up the Sky Dome, it was called at the time, before it was called the Rogers Center. And they said, you know what, if we don't get our stadium in San Francisco, we're going to move to Toronto because it's funny because so the story goes that the Giants were going to move to Toronto back many years ago, and now they were threatening again, and they said they're going to put two teams in Toronto, and they were going to put them in what was called Exhibition Stadium, the stadium before the Sky Dome. And I just laughed and said, "There's no chance they're going to put two baseball teams out here," you know. And we've had our struggles. Look, since we won our World Series championships, and then the strike of '94, it took a long time for us to recover until the Joey Bats bat flip. You know, it was hard in this city. You know. And you can have a great fan base, you can have a great population base and economics, but you don't deliver a winning product. You know, people this day and age have so much things that they can spend their dollar on that sports could be the first thing to suffer. So you have to consistently deliver, otherwise they may not be interested. So that's where, you know, when I look at this list and I think to myself, yes, MLB expansion is going to happen. And, you know, it's the excitement of the initial, you know, draw when it's a new team. And very often they usually suck for the first while, except you're the Las Vegas Golden Knights, you know, go to the Stanley Cup finals. But that's rare and few between. And then when the novelty wears off, you know, between years, as early as year 2 to year 5, will it continue? So from my end, you know, I think we both agree Vegas. We have our safe picks, which for me would be Portland. Yours would be Nashville. And I'm still going Mexico City because I think that they want to break out of the realm. And for you, it'd be in Montreal.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love the Mexico City. I totally forgot about that too. That would be an amazing spot.
I remember being out in Mexico enough, and it's such a great vibe out there. And I said to myself, wow, if I was a player, I'd be all over this. This would be the greatest thing, you know, living out here, just be a lot of fun. But we'll see. Either way, they're going to get their money with certainty, and the dollars are there. It literally blows my mind. You know, I remember, you know, when there was the first $1 million baseball player and then the $3 million baseball player, and how much teams were worth, and things have just got thrown out the window. It's unbelievable how much these franchises are worth and where the dollars are at. So let's see where it goes.
Yeah. It's a good sign, though. It's a good sign for the game.
So so for our next topic, let's jump into, so we're talking about economics, and now we're talking about first about bringing new teams on board, bringing a new player on board, and when a player gets posted and how that works. Won't get into that, but I just have to say the name and people get excited. Shohei Ohtani.
Yes.
Shohei Ohtani. So reading back on our interview back in the day, you indicated that you had pitched a perfect game back when you were a youngster.
Yeah, when I was a little league, yes, I did.
How old were you at the time?
I think I was 12. I was 12 when I threw a perfect game. It was the Little League Dodgers, Poway National Little League.
Buddy, why were you not still pitching? When did you make this? You pitched a perfect game. It doesn't matter. It's 12 years old. At what point did you give up pitching, and why did you give up pitching?
I was I did two-way when I was a freshman in college, and then ultimately I think the hitting was where I wanted to focus more of. I didn't want my college team to just think of me as more of a pitcher. I wanted them, because hitting was what I love to do more of. I love to hit home runs. I love to drive the baseball. Pitching was fun, but at the same time, pitching, you know, with your arm, there's so many uncertainties. You never know if your arm's going to blow out at a certain point. Anytime. Your arm get tired after a certain game. So really the focus of hitting was something that I was more excited about, especially during my college time.
So imagine then, you know, for you having pitched at a certain point and probably were doing pitching and hitting at the same time and then concentrating on hitting. Imagine then what it's like for Bo Jackson back in the day, Deion Sanders back in the day, to be a two-sport player.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
I can't even imagine.
And at that level,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what some of these guys we're really doing. And I think about, you know, the travel factor, the idea that you have to mentally, not just physically, but mentally change gears and go from one sport to the next. You know, and as well as you think about the time that was put in being able to work on these different aspects within the sport. I think about how hard it is just to find enough time to work on just the things that you want to get better at in baseball, but then you got to do it for two different sports. That's at a whole nother level while trying to stay healthy. Those are so many different factors that you have to think about that come into it when you're a two-sport athlete.
and learning those playbooks. Like I've seen what those playbooks look like. And then imagine, you're Bo Jackson and you got to work on your defense. You have to work on your offense in baseball. And then on top of it, you got to learn the whole playbook for the Raiders. And
Right.
it blows my mind. So I'm not belittling what Shohei Ohtani does, but the bar was set when you're a multi-sport player. And then you look at what he's done, and he won in 2021. He won the AL MVP, which I think was well deserved. And how do you not say that this man is a modern day Babe Ruth? I marvel at him, and to prepare as a pitcher and be able to be game ready, but then have the mindset of a hitter, learn all the pitchers when you're going to hit, and then everything else involved, running the bases. How is this man doing what he's doing?
Yeah, I think one thing you look at is to the extent in which he did it last year, especially because he came over from Japan and we expected him to be a two-way player, but we didn't know what caliber. We didn't know if he was going to be a two-way star. We didn't know if he was going to be an average two-way player. And then obviously injuries kind of hurt him along the way to be able to do both. And then last year was absolutely ridiculous, in which we saw him pitch at a high level and hit at a high level, especially when you're talking about the power side of the production. So to see what he was able to do once he kind of put it all together, that's what was most surprising. And like you said, we hadn't seen that since a guy like Babe Ruth. And so he is the modern day, but I don't even think that's comparison enough either, because you look at who he's facing. You look at Shohei Ohtani's not facing guys that Babe Ruth was facing, right? You're talking about guys throwing 100 miles an hour nowadays with 95-mile-an-hour cutters and 92-mile-an-hour sliders. Like, so just to see the type of guys he's facing while doing what he did on the bump, that was extremely impressive for me to see. And I'm interested to see to what capacity will he be able to repeat or be able to do something similar this upcoming season.
I love that logic, and I agree with you 1,000%. When I think of Babe Ruth's days, and you look at the numbers, you had starting pitchers that would be pitching 200 pitches. They'd be in there all pitching complete games. That was the way it was back then. So when he's coming up in the 8th, 9th inning as a hitter, he's facing a guy that's gassed out. Whereas I remember when I wrote about this, and this is way before Tampa did it, and the idea of the opener, and where did I take it from? It was from Cuban baseball, from the World Baseball Classic, which we'll talk about later on. But the idea of your closer, you have two closers, one that's starting the game. So now we're going to call them the opener. I didn't call them an opener, but that's now what the baseball terminology is. So you have your closer at the beginning, and you have your closer at the end, and the guys in the middle. And you have your 7th inning specialist, 8th inning specialist, and they're coming in, and guys throwing from the right, guy throwing from the left. This guy throws sinkers, this guy throws curves, and it's so much more challenging as a hitter today than what it was in like 1920, 1930, 1940. It's that level of competition, plus the number of games you're playing and the demand on your body when you're playing that number of games. I marvel how this man's done it. Sure, he's had his injuries, which is not unrealistic. Like you're saying, coming over from the Japanese game to the North American game, adjusting to that, and then being a two-way guy. I think the guy is doing something like unprecedented that we've literally never seen. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think about the adjustment factor coming over from a different country. Just knowing that the adjustment going from the United States over to Asia is its own adjustment factor. So for him to have to come over and still do what he did, adjust to the league, both offensively and as a pitcher, that's something you can't even speak for, because none of us will even know what he's had to go through to get to this point. If you think about Babe Ruth, at least he had the idea that he understood the language. He was already comfortable knowing where he lived, where he was from. This is a player that's come over from a different country now and has dominated our game.
And with Babe, he gave up pitching, obviously, and a lot of people, unless you're a baseball historian, have no clue that the man was ever a pitcher, and became one of the greatest hitters of all time. The Babe with Ohtani is where is he going to end up ultimately? He can't do both. Everybody says it, and I think most of us will agree with it. Eventually, he's going to give up one or the other. You're a betting man. Where do you see him going?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to do both for sure. I don't want to, I don't. One thing I know is I don't want to bet against this man, because of what he's been able to show us, and this is something that he's done for his whole career. So it'll be interesting to see how long, if anything, that I feel like the pitching side will come to an end before the hitting side. But I'm not to say how long that's going to be. That's for sure. I don't want to put any limits on Shohei Ohtani.
Love it. Love it. It's just a question of, his longevity. The same thing. I don't think it's any different than the debate we would have with catchers. When you have those, you have the Buster Posies and you're like, okay, this man can't keep doing it because the wear and tear on his knees, We have to move to first base, got to move to the outfield. You always hear those discussions. So same thing will follow with him. If I was betting, I would say as well, he's going to give the pitching side simply because, like you said, that wear and tear. The other argument, I love that MVP debate of you can't give it to a pitcher because, the hitter is in there every day and the starting pitcher is in there once every 5 days. So you're more valuable as an everyday player versus the every 5 days, except for the fact that we know that pitching is always at a premium. You can never have too much pitching in baseball, no matter what. And a valuable starting pitcher is almost impossible to come by versus having, let's say, an outfielder. So, the juggle is there. I certainly hope that, injuries don't cut him short. I hope we see him have a 20-year career and see him in the Hall of Fame one day. I would love to see him a two-way player. My gut is if he's going to stay as a two-way, I see him more eventually being in the closer/hitter role. So not having him have so much wear and tear on his arm. Tell him we'll bring you out there every couple of days, maybe, so keep you fresh. Just pitch one inning, get us the save, and let's move on. Maybe it'll go that way, but it's gonna be a combination of, it's also this. There's a lot of ego in sports. We're all competitive when we play out there, no matter what level it's at. Even if it's recreational league, and we always want to be the best. And he'll have to determine with his advisors and his doctors and the team which way he's going to go. But I don't know what we're seeing right now, if we'll ever see that again in our lifetime. So I tell people, you have the opportunity to see this man, pay the money. It's worth it. You'll see something you'll never see again, possibly.
Yeah, just appreciate it. I forget who I was telling. I said, if there's one person that I'm going to pay to go see and watch play a ball game, it's going to be Shohei Ohtani, because he could, hit a 450-foot bomb and also throw 7 complete, shutout innings, striking out 10 to 12 batters. So if I'm going to get my money's worth, it's going to be somebody that's doing it on both sides.
Love it. Well, segue wise, in my estimation, to get more out of Ohtani and get more Ohtani type baseball going, if I was commissioner and I was going to be talking with the owners and the players, I would be getting rid of the DH altogether. I love, and I grew up on the DH. Like, I grew up in Toronto, so American League City. And, I love my DHs, the Dave Parkers of this world, the David Ortizes. And I understand the rationale where somebody, can't necessarily play the field to a capable level and why it's good and give them rest days. And DH has a lot of great attributes of why it got put into place. But you grew up on the National League game. You were in the Cardinals system. You were in the Marlins system. There's talk now that this is pretty much now a guarantee that when we're going to come to start the 2022 season, the universal DH is here. We can kiss National League style baseball goodbye. What are your thoughts? Do you love or hate the universal DH?
Yeah, I love the national side of the game, the National League side of the game. I love the strategic moves that the manager has to make, whether it be a double switch, whether it be trying to figure out the best time to bring in the relief pitcher, how to navigate these different batting lineups. That's one thing I do love. But the one thing that I love about the DH coming into play now is I've seen as a player that the pitchers don't put any time and effort into the offensive side of the game anymore. There's no pitchers that are really focused on hitting the way that they should, not even practicing bunting the right way. We see so many injuries now to pitchers because they're not actually practicing hitting, not practicing getting out of the box, not practicing running the bases. For me, that comes into play. And then now knowing that there's a lot of pitchers that are just going to stand there and not even swing the bat, that's a good waste of a minute or two of my life watching this game of baseball. And I don't have time to waste. So I want to see guys that are going to swing the bat. So I love the idea of the DH coming into play because I want to see more action. I want to see more hitters actually up there swinging the bat.
So we got players of all sorts of levels. And you're right. Maybe it's not the way it was back in the day when the Greg Maddixes of the world, would come up to bat and be really competitive up there, and Tom Glavines, they had a different mindset of it. And I remember watching back in the day Chinman Wang for the Yankees in Houston and rounding the bases, injuring himself, just rounding the bases, and here's their most valuable starting pitcher, and he was never the same after that. He never really recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And, people think as a pitcher, it's all about the arm, but the legs make a big difference. Whether you're a hitter, a pitcher, a golfer, a tennis player,
Absolutely.
leg strength is a really big thing. And you blow out your quads, you blow out your calves, it's really, really tough to generate power, and Chinman Wang never really recovered from it. Unfortunately, he was a great one, and I could see from that side of it. But, on the same token, I think of Edgar Martinez, back in the day, great player for the Mariners. He was a third baseman, and he was playing an exhibition game in Vancouver out there, and he rounded third base, and he got injured, and that's what led to him to ultimately being a DH because of the condition. So it can happen to a hitter as well. But I can certainly see the side of it that a pitcher, because it's not something they do, something they focus on, that they're exposing themselves way more to risk. But on the other hand of it, what you were saying earlier, I keep coming back to Sunday Night Baseball, but you got the Cubs and the Cards, and you're watching it. It's the bottom of the seventh, and you're down by a run. You got 2 on, 2 out, and your pitcher's up to bat. What do? He's been pitching a hot game. Do you want to take him out now and risk that part of it? But on the other hand, if you don't take him out, you're going to potentially get the out versus bringing in a fresh bat off the bench. So that's why I love the strategy of the National League game. And I really feel like we're going to lose a lot of it. And, reading a lot of interviews with pitchers, there's enough of them, I think, that are still very competitive about it. They want to hit the long ball. Remember that commercial back in the day, Chicks Dig the Long Ball?
With Maddox and Smoltz and
McGuire. Yeah. Loved it. So, if I had the vote in it, I would keep the National League game going. I would love to get rid of the DH in that sense. But if you're going to do it, it was nice that there was a difference. There was a little bit more personality in the baseball when you had the DH versus the non-DH, and then interleague play started. It got kind of getting meshed. But I think we can agree that the economics of the game and the investment we have in these pitchers now, they're too valuable that ultimately it makes sense. Plus, I think if I'm the players union, it's more jobs because we're going to have either dedicated DHs or it gets more people into the system as far as hitting wise when they're having rest days off the field. So I think for the health of baseball, I think the universal DH is a good idea, but as a baseball purist, it sickens me. The same idea, the idea of like ending a baseball game on a home run derby, like the way they have it in hockey. When they end a game on a shoot, I said it's no different in baseball that we end the regulation baseball game in the 9th inning and then we go hit a home run derby, and then you start putting guys on second base to start the inning. The pure side of me, gets really ill. So I hope they don't mess the game up too much. But on the other hand, they do enough to keep, the players, in good standing and healthy and active with jobs. So that's where I think, in the collaboration between the owners and the players, they come up with the system. So it wasn't a surprise to me that they went universal DH.
Yeah, no, definitely 100%. There was something that they had to do. And, a lot of especially, I understand being a purist and understand, the traditional aspects of the game. There just has to be some things that have to change moving forward because we understand that a younger generation is now watching our game, and we have to be able to at least help them, when it comes to some of the parts of our game that can be a little bit more entertaining for them. We have to understand that people, are not going to sit and watch the 3-4 hour game the same way they used to, that our game has been watched for a long period of time. So we have to start figuring out what are those things that are going to allow this next generation to still be attracted to this game and let it still be entertaining while they consume it.
Love it. Well, great segue to our next topic then, how to build the interest in the game. And let me ask you, having played professionally, did you ever represent your country in any capacity?
No, I did not. Not in any sense, like a Olympic or anything, or Team USA, nothing like that. No.
Wasn't sure even like in Little League or if there was any sort of that. And let me ask you, back in your playing days, if you had gotten the phone call and it was the World Baseball Classic or the Olympics, Xavier wants you on a team, what's your answer?
Yeah, that would be awesome to represent my country like that. Yes.
So, do you have so now people can sense where we're going with this. international play and where baseball's going. And baseball got dumped by the Olympics a while ago, and not dissimilar to hockey, where we can't send the professionals because it's a mid-season and blah blah blah. So not going to happen. So Olympics come back, and like that sore kid says, "I'm going to take my ball and go home." So they took their medals and went home, and there was no more baseball in the Olympics, and they replaced it with underwater basket weaving or something along those lines. And to me, not having baseball in the Olympics, how do you say this is not a sport in the Summer Olympics? It is the summer sport. And no baseball, no softball makes no sense to me. And then they brought it back in 2020, as they said, as an exhibition. And then they're saying it's not coming back in 2024. So that's part one. Part two, World Baseball Classic, looking at the years 06, 09, 2013, 2017. So WBC was going to happen 2021. A lot of interest generated in it. A lot of new countries got involved. They had the qualifying tournament. I'm Jewish background, seeing Team Israel. I'm like, yeah, this was amazing. I stayed up all hours. Like when WBC is going on, like I'm watching, like consuming like 12 hours of baseball a day easily. And I'm loving my life. Yeah. And with pandemic, they put it on pause. When you go on every website, it says WBC is postponed indefinitely. So do you think that WBC will go on? Should go on? Should we be in the Olympics? What's your feeling of baseball in international waters? And is this good for the game?
Yeah, I would love to see the Olympics. I would love to see WBC. I'm hoping it does go on soon. I look at the game in the way that it's growing internationally, and I would love to see all countries, be able to be represented when it comes to things like Olympics and the WBC. But not just because of like the growth of our game, but because I think that in any capacity in which you can represent your country, that's amazing to see. But then also the perspective other people get to see, right? So whether it be somebody going to a different country to go play that game, whether it be somebody getting to see a glimpse of what that country is like when it's shown on TV, you mentioned Team Israel, getting to see a little bit of the country of what's there, what are some of the prolific areas to go to. We get a sense of seeing that when we watch the Olympics, when we watch WBC, those educational type moments. I think those are things that open up perspectives to a whole nother light. So I love that aspect of it, and I want to see more of it.
So we hosted here a qualifying tournament one year. I believe it was 09, if I'm not mistaken. And we had Canada, Team USA, and I'm not mistaken, it was South Africa and Venezuela. When Team Venezuela was playing, the Venezuelan side of the stadium, they were dancing the whole game. They were losing their minds. When Miguel Cabrera comes up representing Venezuela, the people utterly lost their minds. It was one of the greatest baseball moments I've ever seen in my life. I wish I could have seen Team Cuba, Japan, and seeing the excitement. I can tell you, watching at home and watching Team Cuba and learning their history and everything else. I remember watching Team Cuba, for example, and seeing that the team doctor keeps coming out for checking on the player. And I'm thinking, why is he doing the pitching change? He's a team doctor. And then I realized he's Castro's son. So Castro's son is sitting in the Cuban dugout the whole time as team doctor. And I'm thinking in my head, if I'm the players in the hotel, I'm probably watching myself around him, But he's actually a hero back home. And Castro came to him and said, you have a choice. You either go to the army or you go to medical school. He said, medical school it is. So you start to learn the stories behind the countries and the people. And, how many players graduated from the WBC into Major League Baseball that would have never had that opportunity otherwise because it's shown in that tournament. Kids watching in those countries and saying, oh, wow, I want to be a baseball player, and building more stadiums and, encouraging kids from the younger levels. I think WBC is a huge, huge, great thing for the game. And it just comes down to, again, economics and timing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I love the fact of being able to see these different countries play the game. Like it's cool how some of these guys that are playing in the major leagues get to represent some of their backgrounds, right? Some of their countries that they came up in, or that they get to go back to and represent. Like I love that factor of it, and it's amazing. Even one of my good friends who never even played in the major leagues, I think of Blake Galen. He specifically played for Team Israel, and this is a guy that has been chasing a dream for a long period of time, and ultimately that becomes a dream for somebody. So I think of that being an ultimate goal for a lot of players.
So I think if you're a baseball fan, a baseball purist, I think there's no debate that you want to see baseball in the Olympics and see them in the and the WBC continue. From the Olympic side of it, it kind of bothered me when the professionals started going. To me, that the Olympics was about the amateurs. I remember, the golden moment in baseball to me is that '84 Olympic team with Mark McGuire and Corey Snyder and all those guys. And we had the baseball cards back in the day, and those guys all graduated, a lot of them to be major league stars. And I don't have an issue with that. I, in fact, encourage it. To me, like the professionals in a way, to me, is taking away from those amateurs and the people that otherwise would not get that kind of exposure. And it's still a high level of ball. It's still growing the sport. And the pros have already been there, they have their opportunity, right. So if we have to choose, if we have to do it during the season, bring out the amateurs, fine. It's still baseball. There's no reason not to have it. It's still going to be something that, us as baseball fans are going to watch it versus not watching. But, from the Olympic side of, it's dollars and cents, and we want professionals out there. And so they're not going to host the Summer Olympics, not in the summer. And we're not going to be postponing the season. That's a toughie because it's in the heat of the pennant
Right.
races and risk of injuries and stoppages. So I kind of get that side of it. So if you're going to have me solve it, it's very simple. Just put the amateurs out there. Let's have amateur the way the Olympics was meant to be, and let's enjoy baseball. So I hope that's the route they're going to go. But unfortunately, with them already saying it's not going to happen in 2024, I don't see it. So if we're going to lose the Olympics, let's keep the WBC going. And I presume, yeah, let's do it. So I'm thinking 2024 is probably more realistic at this point, given, the world conditions, but maybe they're going to restart in 2023. But regardless, I definitely hope we see it soon. And I definitely don't want to see it end. It's one of those things that, in any business venture, it's so easy to give up. It's so easy to look and just saying, okay, it's the semifinals and finals that drew the numbers. The other ones are not drawing as much as they did. It's not enough money generator. Let's move on to other stuff. I think we make enough money in baseball that we need to invest back, and having the game grow internationally, it's worth that investment. So I certainly hope that the owners and the players see that, because it's going to be good for everyone in my estimation.
No, definitely. And I love the excitement that comes around WBC. And you think about, what we get to see on TV. You mentioned the fans in the stands for Venezuela. And a lot of that is such a great sense of how much people love the game. I feel like we got to see it more and more of all the countries.
Perfect. So we've solved a lot for baseball so far already. So baseball executives, Rob Manfred watching this, take our ideas. Let's run with it. Let's make this happen. We've kind of dipped a little bit into controversial areas today, and I try not to get too much, but I have one item now I'm bringing up next. We're talking about excitement of the game. When I was interviewing ball players for MLB Reports, one of the first questions I always asked everyone, who was your favorite baseball player growing up? And I can tell you, if I interviewed 100 players, 90 to 95 of them, their favorite player was Ken Griffey Jr. Yours was Gary Sheffield. And it's funny because to me, Sheffield versus Griffey is like Stones versus Beatles. You were one or the other. And I was a Sheffield guy. I remember him back in the Brewers, met him as a rookie. I asked him for an autograph. I was a kid at the time. He told me, Uncle Dwight told me not to sign right now because this is Uncle Dwight Gooden. So I said, okay, listen, he was in a rush. I gave the guy a pass on it. It was all good. But such a talent, and I thought Sheffield was going to surpass Griffey. And, it's one of those things that there's a mental and physical side of the game. And Griffey, was considered, he was like almost like, the say hey kid, like it was like just that he had that smile on his face and that spark in his swing, and everybody loved the man, And I think Chef, if he had not taken so much to heart and kind of left that side of it and just, focus on the game, I think we would have seen Chef, if he had stayed healthy, I think would have been at Griffey's level.
Yeah, no, definitely.
The part with Griffey that bothers me a lot, and it's not, it's funny because I've debated this with writers and I was told never to publish this. And I had an article once written and we can't go there. And I never understood why. I don't like to delve too much into the steroid era, and I don't want to go into steroids and all that because, that's just a whole debate for another day. And I think everybody's sick of that, the way they're sick of lockouts. But I always ask people that are pure baseball person. I know you're a lover of the game. You have the inside knowledge. So that's why I wanted to raise this piece with you. Ken Griffey Jr., when you think of him, do you feel overrated or underrated?
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily feel one or the other. I feel like, and maybe that's because of being a former player and having played the game and understanding what it is to be hyped up, and then also what it is to hype up somebody that may not be a specific type of player that you expect them to be. I look at Ken Griffey. Had a lot of pressure behind him, obviously because of his dad, but was still able to perform at a super high level. And then at the same time, I look at the injuries that took place, especially toward the latter half of his career, and those taking a toll on maybe the type of player that he is. So I don't know if I necessarily look at him being overrated or underrated. I just look at and see him as a player that I truly appreciate for what he did for the game. When you talk about the excitement, when you talk about marketability, when you talk about really growing the game, those things I all take into consideration, as well as what he did on the field and the numbers that he put up. So I honestly can't say I feel as he's overrated or he's underrated.
When I think of him, and again, I think of the terms because I was there and I lived and breathed and slept it in the days. I was there at the Dome and watching him, what he was doing when he was with the Mariners before he went to the Reds. Always a big fan of his, watching him and just, a lot of respect for him. It's funny. I kind of compare him to Wayne Gretzky in hockey, because Gretzky, the great one, is considered the greatest hockey player of all time. But, his reputation, he wasn't the nicest guy when you met him out. Just, depends on the context of when you met him. Some people would always sign an autograph. They'd sit with you and talk for hours. And Gretzky wasn't necessarily one of those people. Griffey was the same way. He maybe would be sharp with you, may not sign, will sign, not belittling them. But one of the things I said when somebody didn't get an autograph from Gretzky, I said, do you have any idea what this man, and I was a youngster at the time, do you realize what this man goes through? This man cannot survive 1 minute waking without somebody wanting a picture, wanting an autograph. Look at what, like, we were at the Hilton Hotel in Toronto, and I said, he's with his freaking family. He's signing autographs before he goes in the restaurant. I can see inside the restaurant, people are asking for pictures. The man cannot eat one meal in peace without getting interrupted every 3 seconds. At some point, that has to wear on you, and you have to make that decision as an athlete. I'm either going to make myself completely accessible, completely not accessible, or kind of a hybrid. You, in how you present yourself, Xavier, I think whatever level you would have reached, I think you would have made yourself accessible because that's your personality type, and
Yeah.
and when you were going through in Korea, when you were in the minors, how did you react with fans? How did you feel with the interactions? Did they ever overstep their boundaries? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I think especially, I guess, as far as fans go, Korea was probably where I experienced, most of quote unquote stardom, and people really, coming up to me, and a large group of people always wanting autographs, pictures, whatever it may be. But that was something I tried to really be respectful about and try to sign as much as possible. Obviously, there's going to be situations where you can't please everybody, but I tried to take my time to do those things because I want people to understand that, before I'm a baseball player, I'm a human being, and I want to show people that I respect them. And obviously, Korea and the Asian culture, respect is a huge factor. So I wanted to be able to show those types of things. And ultimately, you have to draw lines, though. I think that most athletes will understand that it's going to be tough if you don't draw lines. So for me, there's certain times when you're with your family, in which you don't want to be interrupted. You want to be able to have that quality time. Otherwise, you're really not giving yourself your full, you're really not giving your family the full attention that they deserve. I believe that you have to have those boundaries. Definitely came into play multiple times, especially while I was in Korea. But ultimately, you want to be able to do what you can for the people that do support you, especially if you're somebody that feeds off of that support as well.
Yeah, no, all makes sense. And I think that's where Gretzky drew his line at some point. It was probably different back in his early, younger Oilers days, the same way Griffey did. And Griffey, people loved him for what he was on the field. I don't know how many of them knew him off the field. And I can't say, like, I hung out with the guy, had dinner with the guy, but you saw what he was defensively. You saw his swing. and it was just hard not to fall in love with the guy, looking at his Upper Deck rookie card.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, okay, based on his talent, I think he got a bit of a pass that way for maybe his conduct a little bit, because he was on a little bit of a grumbly guy, but nobody was really bothered. Where it really bothers me at the end of the day is more that era and why he gets a free pass when basically nobody else does. Anybody who played in that era when he did get pretty much zero passes, even if they were never convicted, they were never brought onto anything of suggestion wise. And I've studied Griffey's stats, and I was obsessed with it. And I looked at it and I said, okay, he played with A-Rod, he played with Buhner. Come on, look at the numbers. Come on, goes to Cincinnati. Come on. And then he signs the free agent contract, has the one big year, and then the breakdown starts, which we know when people do certain things to their bodies and then they get off those things, that the body can break down. And I'm not at all suggesting in this episode that Griffey at all was a user, but all I'm saying is everybody else got painted under that brush. So and it affected their Hall of Fame voting. He was the one guy that gets a free pass, and you can't even raise it without people getting upset. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. I look at, like you said, that era. A lot of guys do get, pegged for quote unquote PED usage. They look like they might have used it, or their numbers.
Jeff Bagwell, for example.
Yeah, their numbers maybe suggest. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know exactly the situation during that time in which, if somebody felt like he did it. I always heard, and I don't know Ken Griffey's career like the back of my hand or anything like that, but I always felt like people, at least who I talked to, had mentioned that him having a lot of injury issues, he was one of those guys they felt like he could have benefited from doing it even more and wouldn't have had a lot of those injury issues. So I don't know if that comes into play, but ultimately I can't speak for why anybody else has given him a pass or what somebody else might think about him, especially because I didn't play during that time, and I don't know. Everything is still speculation as to who we believe did it or who we believe didn't, because ultimately the testing wasn't in place officially until 2004. So that's tough to speak on.
I'll tell you why I brought it up, and you brought it on yourself simply because you told me a decade ago that Chef was your favorite player. And so that got me thinking about it and where his career went and others. And that's kind of the alignment there. And I think ultimately Griffey is just such a face to the game. And you think about where the man was at, he's just too valuable of it. And he's spoken out about it and said that, I never used and that was never part of it. And what saddens me is why he has to even say that. It saddened me that if you played in that era, that you are automatically essentially convicted and you're guilty until proven innocent. He's the one guy who I felt is not, but he still brought it up, and just the way I'm sick of lockouts, I'm sick of PDs and all this. And let's just talk about baseball, talk about purity. So from Griffey's standpoint, we've covered him. We look now back at Chef and look at the Hall of Fame, our final topic of the day. So one of the first questions I have for you is looking back, is Chef still your favorite player?
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite players. Him and Tony Gwynn are both my two favorite players.
Oh, yes. Love Tony Gwynn. Oh boy, I could watch him. Him and Wade Boggs, 1A, 1B, whichever way you want to look at it, those were just the purest hitting machines. Yes. I think Gwynn is one of the most underrated players of his time. And I could not stop watching the man. It was just marveling at him,
I grew up in San Diego, so Tony Gwynn was somebody that I always just was able to watch on TV consistently, was able to kind of watch the way he had an amazing approach at the plate. It seemed like he could always, even with two strikes, it didn't matter if it was no strikes, two strikes, he always found a way to put the ball in play and always did it consistently. He was always a high average guy, even very athletic early on in his career, was able to steal bases. So was always an impact player for the Padres for such a long period of time.
Did you ever get to meet him?
Yeah, I did get to meet him. He's I actually went to the same school as his son, Tony Gwynn Jr., same high school. And then Tony Gwynn was actually a coach for San Diego State And
Yes,
I went to
yes.
UNLV, so I played San Diego State a lot during my time while he was the head coach during that time. So we got to talk, we got to meet. My mom and him were actually kind of walking buddies. They used to walk around the same area where I grew up. So it's cool. Yeah, he was a really nice guy.
Did he try recruiting you?
No, he didn't. He did not try recruiting me. I was actually disappointed because I wanted to go to San Diego State, but I
Yes.
guess during that time, for some reason, they didn't recruit me, and I ended up going to a school that was able to play San Diego State, so I was able to beat up on them a little bit.
And UNLV, great reputation, great school. So I think you made a great choice there.
Thank you. Thanks.
So if you had a Hall of Fame voting card, would you have put Chef in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, I would have. Yes, I would have.
Why?
That definitely. I look at what he was able to do. I look at that 500 career home runs kind of being one of those markers that we talk about. And then I look at some of the PED kind of talks around that time. For me personally, I believe that since there wasn't an exact testing in place until 2004, I think that anybody that was associated with that deserves not to be penalized during that time. So because we don't have the exact proof, and if we did have the proof, there was no testing to say that that person does not deserve or should be suspended or should be penalized during that time. So I feel like any of those guys that were associated with during that time still deserve to be in if they have the numbers.
If I'm looking at rating Hall of Fames in sports, NHL, NFL, NBA, to me, it's like a participant award. Like, let's just keep the line rolling. Everybody just gets in essentially. I think hockey is like the easiest one to get into. Same with the
Mhm.
NFL. NBA is a little harder. The MLB Hall of Fame, the in Cooperstown, this is the hardest Hall of Fame to get into by far. And the debate we always have, among purists when you're debating a certain person, it's so nitpicky. Like, for example, like you talk about 500 home runs. Okay, so the person had 498, but he has everything else. Oh, this person has 600 home runs, but never won an MVP. This
Right.
this person won 3 World Series. To me, it is the hardest Hall of Fame, and it's like when people bring up certain players are saying, is it the Hall of Fame or is it the Hall of Very Good? You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and do you think ultimately it's a good thing that the MLB Hall of Fame is harder to get into, or do you think that it should be more inclusive and more players should be able to get in on their merits?
No, I think it's a good thing. It is a Hall of Fame for a reason. I think you think about today, the way that we evaluate players is different than how we evaluated them in the past. So there's always going to be difference of opinions. There's always going to be people that believe so and so should get in, and there's going to be people that are against that. So I think that's what makes it the Hall of Fame. That's what makes it voting. That's what makes everybody's decisions different. But I would much rather it be the Hall of Fame rather than it be the Hall of Good or Great.
Have you been down to Cooperstown?
I haven't. That was one place I do need to go. I have not been
Buddy,
to
we need to do a
Cooperstown.
road trip, man. I'll come from the north, you come from the west, and we'll meet over
Yes.
there. I'm telling you, it's a different life out in Cooperstown. I've never been there for an induction ceremony weekend, but you
Mhm.
walk up and down the streets as memorabilia shops as far as the eye can see. And you get to
Wow.
see some really, really cool things that you think you'll never find again. And then you actually walk in there. And I remember the last time I was at Cooperstown, I was there right until closing hour. I think I was there for 6 hours,
Wow.
and just marveling at everything, every piece of
That's
memorabilia,
really
every piece of
cool.
the story. It's like, and I remember like some stuff like, oh my God, I was there when Mark Whitten hit, 5 home runs or 4 home runs, and there's the bat from that game, and love it.
Wow.
I love every part of it. So I'm telling you, especially when you're, how old are your boys now?
My boys are 3, 2, and I have a 6-month-old daughter.
Oh, congratulations. I didn't realize you had just had a daughter. Oh, excellent.
Yes. Yeah.
So your life is a little complicated right now, and I would certainly would not be bringing a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-month-old to Cooperstown. But I would certainly say sometime in the next 5 years, give or take, I think that'd be a wonderful experience for the family. I think,
Yeah.
in understanding what daddy does and what daddy did. And, daddy was this close to being in here, guys. And it'd be
Yes,
a
no, I have to for sure. I gotta go for myself, and definitely would want my sons and daughter to see, and even my wife. I don't think she's been to Cooperstown either, so I would want everybody to see.
Get everybody over there. Trust me, man. It's very much worth it.
Hmm.
So where are you living out these days? And tell us what do you have planned now going into the winter spring seasons?
Yeah, I'm in Tampa, Florida.
Nice.
Yeah, just I'm getting ready for ESPN. We got college baseball getting ready going. Obviously, there's no Major League Baseball at the moment. So getting excited for college baseball. I'll be doing analyst work for them. Sirius XM in the mornings.
What
MLB
channel?
Network channel 89 on Sirius XM, MLB Network radio, 7 to 10 called the leadoff spot with Steve Phillips. So
Smart
I'm doing
dude.
that. Yes, I'm doing that right now, and it's fun, man.
Nice. So ultimately, when you started playing ball, when you went to UNLV, when you're waiting to get drafted, if you knew your life would look like today, looking ahead, and you said at this age, this is where I'd be at, you'd be happy with that life?
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't be able to complain whatsoever. Super blessed. No matter where I ever got to with baseball or what I'm doing now, all the opportunities that I've been afforded, with the people that are around me, having good health, all those things become so much more important. And man, extremely happy about kind of the path that my life has taken with baseball, even transitioning outside of baseball. So extremely blessed about all those things.
Amazing. Well, you're a real inspiration to your fans, to the baseball fans out there, and for the non-baseball fans listening, hearing your story, hearing your words. I hope that we get more baseball fans out in the future because it's a great game. I love the game very much and growing it. But even just hearing your story as an entrepreneur and the different things you're doing with helping athletes through extraordinary athletes, consulting with the Cardinals as far as diversity and inclusion goes, you're a real inspiration to the real entrepreneurs. So you're one of the first, if not only, athletes that have a LinkedIn profile. And it's, you really set yourself really well. So anybody curious to learn about you, you're on all the social medias, you have your podcast up on YouTube and being on Instagram. But I would say if you really want to learn this guy, go on LinkedIn, see what it's about. And, the next time you think I'm too busy to do something and to make my dreams come true, check out this person and you may think differently.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's been a long, fun journey, and I'm excited to keep going. We're just getting started.
I was gonna say you're just getting started, man. You're just getting into your prime, and looking forward to hearing your call one day on in the World Series when you get there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for taking the time for us today. Honestly, it's been a great journey for both you and I. Meeting up again, all this time later, and certainly hope we'll get you back in during the MLB season.
Yes, excited for that. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate the platform that you have going on here. Keep up the good work and don't stop ever.
Never. As long as there's breath in the body, it's got to keep going. So thank you very much, Xavier Scruggs, for taking the time for us today. And we always sign off. We bring our arm over like this. And we say, keep living the chosen life.
Keep living the chosen life.
Thanks, man. Wait a minute. Are we still running? Well, I know you already hit the subscribe button, the like button to say how much you love this episode, and the notification bell so you get notified of all our future episodes. But you still feel like you want more. Well, when you're ready to contact the chosen lawyers at Kormans LLP, we are here to help you. Whether you're looking to close a real estate transaction, a refinance, a corporate commercial matter like a lease, a shareholder agreement, an incorporation, you need a will or power of attorney prepared, a family law matter comes up, contact the chosen lawyers. We are here for you. So how do you get in touch with us? It's really simple. You go onto our website, go to kormans.ca, that's KORMANS.ca, fill out the contact form, and a chosen lawyer will get in touch with you. So it's very easy. We look forward to seeing you very soon. And thank you very much for watching The Chosen Life. We'll see you back very shortly.